Chapter 1364. Jianghu's proposal was agreed upon by everyone. Although they were all competitors and didn't like each other, now that someone from Lingxiao College had entered and broken the balance, they had no choice but to join forces. The heavenly square cauldron was very likely to be inside. What if it was taken away just like that? This was the reason why they had come all the way here. Elder Hua Feng clenched his fists tightly, his face solemn. But he also knew that he couldn't stop this matter. He didn't know where Bo Yen and the others were now, only their group was here, and they weren't a match for those people on the other side. If Chu Yu really came out safely and obtained some kind of opportunity, these people wouldn't let him leave so easily. Elder Hua Feng, don't you want to bring that Chu Yu out too? Why don't we do it together? Jianghu teased. Others might not know the name Chu Yu, but he knew it like thunder. There weren't many people who could survive after making the Golden Wing sect suffer a loss. Elder Hua Feng hesitated for a moment before nodding. Why not? I just don't know which door you want to break through from. Jianghu smiled and said, how about the door that Chu Yu entered before? That's the only door that has been opened so far. Elder Hua Feng said indifferently, you may not know this, but that door has been sealed by a boulder, and there's no way to enter. You don't have to worry about this. The commotion just now, the other doors, should be the same, right? Jianghu said as he looked around at the crowd. Everyone, am I right? No one refuted. Since all the doors have been sealed, then, although he didn't finish his words, how could everyone not understand what he meant? Elder Hua Feng narrowed his eyes. Please. Chu Luiyue seemed to have entered a subtle state. Her body was constantly devouring the energy of heaven and earth around her. She could also clearly feel the invisible barrier. It was as if she could break it with a stretch of her hand and officially step into the 9th stage. But somehow, she felt that she was still a little short. She didn't know how much time had passed, and she couldn't even remember how much energy she had absorbed. Inside his dantian, the water droplet quietly rotated. The 8 lines were bright and dazzling. Only the 9th line had yet to appear. Chu Luiyue knew that every time he tried to break through, he had to expend more energy than others. Therefore, she was already prepared. But he didn't expect that there was still such a huge gap between a rank 8 warrior and a rank 9 warrior. Blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth, flowing down her jade-white skin and dripping onto her clothes. Gradually, the blood spread out and transformed into dark red plum blossoms. Her face was very pale, and her thick and long eyelashes cast 2 faint shadows under her eyes. Suddenly, a loud sound came from outside. The ground shook. On the tombstone in front of Chu Luiyue, there seemed to be colorful lights flashing in the countless black cracks. It was as if something was gradually awakening. Rumble. Another loud noise came from the canyon. Rocks flew everywhere, and dust rose into the air. However, the road that was originally sealed was finally cleared out after such a torment. Although it was narrow and could only accommodate 2 people walking side by side, it was enough for everyone. Elder Hua Feng, since you've been here before, then please take the lead. Jianghu's proposal was once again unanimously agreed. Elder Hua Feng sneered in his heart. Aren't you just afraid that there will be danger ahead? You want to get the treasure, but you're not willing to take the risk. Serves you right for not getting anything. Elder Hua Feng didn't say anything and walked forward. In front of him, the blazing door was still emitting an astonishing amount of heat. The closer he got, the more the force in his body wanted to boil. Elder Hua Feng held his breath. Right now, he only hoped that Chu Yu was fine inside. An empty space was cleared in front of the door. After Elder Hua Feng stood still, he turned around and looked at them. We've tried various methods before, but we can't open this door alone. So, let's work together. Everyone walked over one after another and stood in their respective positions. The leaders of the various families looked at each other and finally agreed. Everyone, let's work together to open the door first. After that, we'll rely on our own abilities. Although everyone had their own ulterior motives, they would still do some superficial work at this time. Swoosh, swoosh. Several streams of force flew out. Everyone worked together, intending to open the door. A strike landed. Boom. The door didn't move at all. Everyone's expressions changed. Suddenly, a Tianlei flashed in the sky. A dazzling light instantly illuminated half of the sky. Everyone looked up. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and it was so dark that it was almost as if night had fallen. A storm swept over, and the wind howled. Several Tianlei appeared from behind the clouds one after another. From afar, it looked like silver snakes were swimming crazily. A natural phenomenon. Is a supreme treasure about to appear? A surprised and excited voice came from the crowd. Such an extraordinary formation, I'm afraid that the legendary Heavenly Square Cauldron is about to appear. But soon, someone denied this guess. No, the energy of heaven and earth is gathering. This is clearly, someone is about to break through. Although the appearance of a natural treasure would cause a phenomenon, it wouldn't gather so much energy of heaven and earth. It could only mean that someone was about to break through. Elder Huafeng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be true? A Tianlei fell with a loud bang. It went straight for the center of the 9 dragon skeletons. Digression, I'm finally alive. Update at 7 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1365. Is Chu Yu breaking through? This thought flashed through Elder Huafeng's mind, but he quickly rejected it. Chu Yu had just broken through to rank 8 some time ago. How could he break through in such a short period of time? Moreover, advancing from the early stage to the middle stage or even the peak stage of rank 8 would not cause such a huge commotion. Then, it should be someone else? There must be other powerful people hidden inside. Elder Huafeng could not help but worry. The situation was tense. What was Chu Yu's situation inside? Boom. Just as he was thinking about it, Tianlei in the sky struck down again. The thick snow began to melt, revealing the rocks below. In the eyes of the surrounding people, the huge rock in the middle was almost like a lone island. It was only connected to the 9 dragon skeletons on the outside. Affected by this energy, the people standing at the front subconsciously took a few steps back. Their expressions were not good. What's going on? Everyone can't enter even if they join forces. Are we going to wait here forever? Not to mention, Tianlei continued to fall, almost devouring this place. Such a scene. Could it be that someone is breaking through to the God realm? At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on that side. Elder Dan Qing was no exception. Because he was injured, he stood at the back, but his eyes were still fixed on the front. Suddenly, a timid and soft voice came from behind. Master? Elder Dan Qing turned around, and undisguised disgust flashed across his eyes. I've said it before, I'm no longer your master. You should forget about calling me that. Jiang Jiwan's heart turned cold from his gaze. After entering the academy for so many years, her master had never looked at her with such an expression. She bit her lip and was about to kneel down again. Elder Dan Qing sneered. Don't do those useless things. Even if you die and shatter your knees, this old man will never take back what I said earlier. Jiang Jiwan's movements suddenly froze, and she did not know what to do for a moment. She was born with a noble status and had always been doted on. When had she ever suffered such humiliation? Elder Dan Qing had severed his relationship with her in front of so many people, almost nailing her to the pillar of shame. How could she accept it? She had to turn the tide. Master, I know. I've disappointed you with what I've done before. I don't want to defend myself, I just want you to give me a chance. Jiang Jiwan's eyes were red. You've seen my current appearance. I'm neither a human nor a ghost. If you don't help me, then how will I conduct myself in the academy and in the divine ruins world in the future? What does that have to do with me? Elder Danqing's expression was cold. Jiang Jiwan, the Immortal Water Mausoleum wouldn't want what you did to spread throughout the divine ruins world, right? Jiang Jiwan looked as if she had been slapped in the face. Her face turned pale. Finally, she gritted her teeth and lowered her face. I understand. Boom, boom. As time passed, the number of Tianlei in the sky increased. The dark and surging clouds were pierced by the dazzling light, making it almost impossible to look directly at them. A crisp shattering sound was suddenly heard. The mountain is about to collapse. Jianghu could clearly see that there was a crack on the door, running from the top to the bottom, penetrating through. A majestic and vast aura overflowed from it. Jianghu's expression changed abruptly. Retreat. They were definitely not a match for this power. Before he finished speaking, his figure had already disappeared from the spot. The others standing around also reacted at this time. Some people followed closely behind and left. There were also some who refused to believe it and insisted on seeing it for themselves. After pausing for a moment, these people were tightly wrapped by the astonishing power and then ruthlessly flung away. The dragon's roar seemed to carry a trace of struggle and pain. At a glance, it seemed to be trying its best to break free from the invisible shackles. Elder Huafeng and the others also quickly retreated. The mountain rock was quickly covered with cracks, like a spider web, as if something was about to break out from it. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes were deep and bright, and her aura was light and majestic. Around her, countless sunlight flickered and swam along her skin. Every inch of her muscles, bones, and flesh was rapidly strengthening. She gathered all the strength in her body and charged towards the water droplet in her dandan. Boom! There was a shocking sound. Ripples appeared on the water droplet. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Then she saw that the 9th rune was slowly appearing. That pattern seemed to condense all the colors in the world, gorgeous and moving. Just a glance seemed to be able to make people unconsciously indulge in it. A sacred and powerful aura suddenly erupted from it. Rank 9 warrior. At this moment, the tombstone in front of Chu Luiyue suddenly shattered. Bang! Countless black fragments scattered in all directions. In an instant, it had filled the entire space. Chu Luiyue was in the middle and was coincidentally surrounded. She focused her gaze and looked forward. These black fragments were of different sizes. Some were the size of fingernails, while others were the size of sesame seeds. They floated silently in the air like stars, flickering incessantly. They seemed to be connected to each other by some sort of invisible and strange force, forming a huge net. A wave of heavy pressure silently spread out. A cold look flashed across Chu Luiyue's eyes. This net had already trapped her within. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1366. With a thought, Chu Luiyue immediately summoned the pure gold sacred armor. Golden light flickered, making her skin look like jade and her eyes look like stars. Then, she took a step forward and held the Scarlet Heaven Sword in her hand. These few actions couldn't be more simple, but Chu Luiyue still felt a heavy pressure. She gripped the Scarlet Heaven Sword tightly. Now, she was certain that this was not only the tomb of a certain expert, but also his divine realm. That was why the flow of time and space here was so different from the outside world. Moreover, after she broke through to rank 9, it still posed a great threat to her. The concentration of the surrounding origin power was still increasing. This already posed a slight threat to the human body. If she couldn't get out of here as soon as possible, even Chu Luiyue couldn't guarantee how long she would be able to last here. She turned around and walked towards the door. With her movements, the surrounding space also flowed, bringing along the floating black fragments. The air seemed to have become sticky. Chu Luiyue didn't stop until she was 3 steps away from the door. She took a deep breath, held the sword with both hands, and raised it high. A powerful force quickly wrapped around the Scarlet Heaven Sword. She didn't hesitate and slashed down. A straight hole suddenly appeared on the tightly locked door. Several cracks spread out. Everyone looked over in shock. A slim and slender figure stepped out from within. It was a youth with a delicate appearance who looked to be only 16 or 17 years old. At this moment, he was holding an extremely sharp longsword in his hand, and his entire body was surging with an astonishing aura. Between his brows, a biting cold fighting spirit flashed. It was as if he wanted to crush everything. Chuyu? Elder Huafeng cried out in surprise, almost unable to believe his eyes. Who else could it be other than Chuyu? Who else could it be? Hearing his voice, everyone present was shocked. Chuyu? The one who went in before? He actually came out alive. And you broke through? Because of the shock, Elder Hua Feng's voice trembled. If he wasn't wrong, Chuyu's current realm was clearly rank 9 warrior? Before he went in, wasn't he only at the early stage of rank 8? Now, why? After Chu Luiyue broke through the door, he realized that something was wrong and quickly looked around. With a glance, she had basically guessed the current situation. It seemed that the previous commotion had summoned all the first-rate clans that were wandering in the northern region of the primordial wilderness. Hearing the voice, she stared at Elder Hua Feng. Her eyes flashed as she asked the question in her heart. Elder, how long has it been? Elder Hua Feng immediately said. 3 days. It has been 3 days since you were locked in there. Only 3 days? Chu Luiyue narrowed his eyes. She had clearly spent a very long time inside. She even felt that several months had passed, or even a year. However, because she was focused on breaking through, she didn't notice how much time had passed. She didn't expect that the changes she experienced inside would only last for 3 short days outside. Seeing her expression, Elder Hua Feng immediately understood something. It seemed that the flow of time inside was very different from outside. That was why Chu Yu broke through to become a rank 9 warrior in such a short period of time. But no matter what, it was best that she could come out safely. He opened his mouth and had a bunch of questions to ask, but when the words reached his mouth, he didn't know where to start. In the end, he only waved at Chu Luiyue. Brat, come back quickly. Did he know that during this period of time, they had been worried to death? Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and moved, about to go over. Wait! Beside her, a low and powerful shout suddenly stopped Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue turned her gaze. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man with a strong figure. That face was very unfamiliar, but at this moment, there was obvious hostility on his face. He didn't come with good intentions. Chu Luiyue became vigilant. May I ask who senior is? Jianghu of the Golden Wing sect. He was full of energy and there was a hint of provocation. His eyes swept over the scarlet heaven sword in Chu Luiyue's hand and sneered with unknown meaning. It seems that this thing is quite handy for you? Chu Luiyue clenched the scarlet heaven sword, but her expression was calm. It was normal for the people of the Golden Wing sect to be hostile to her. Anyway, the scarlet heaven sword was now hers, and they couldn't take it back no matter what. You brat, your luck is good. Not only did you get a rare treasure, but you even tried to compete for other Chuyu. For the sake of Lingxiao College's face, I'll give you a chance. Immediately hand over everything you got there. That's not something you can take. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly, but found that the people next to her didn't refute, as if they agreed with these words. But she was inside, but with the help of the majestic power of heaven and earth, she broke through to the rank 9 warrior. How could she pay it back? Senior Jianghu, please forgive this junior for being stupid, but I don't know what you are referring to. Although Chu Luiyue was puzzled in her heart, she was still very polite on the surface. With so many people present, she didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. Jianghu sneered and his tone became impatient. What, you don't admit it? Chu Luiyue said calmly. If you don't make it clear, this junior really doesn't know what you mean. Jianghu let out a You're still pretending to be crazy. What we want is naturally the heavenly square sacred cauldron. Chapter 1367. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. Someone interrupted from the side. That's right. As long as you hand over the heavenly square cauldron, everything else is negotiable. Chu Luiyue glanced at the person who spoke. She didn't know him, but he seemed to be an important figure of a first-class clan. Those who could come here were not ordinary people, so their words naturally carried a lot of weight. Chu Luiyue looked around calmly. Many people didn't speak, but this attitude showed that they were on the same side as Jianghu. Seeing that Chu Luiyue didn't speak for a long time, Jianghu only thought that she had obtained a treasure and was unwilling to give it up, so he continued, Chu Yu, you are still young, and there are some things that you can't touch. Even if you get it by luck, you may not be able to keep it. Keeping it in your hands will only cause trouble and bring trouble. So, it's better to hand it over. As for us, We will owe you a favor. How about it? Chu Luiwei suddenly understood. Do you all think that I got the heavenly square cauldron from inside? No one answered. But everyone's expression clearly said, of course. Obviously, this was already their consensus. Not to mention that they had caused such a big commotion, they had all worked together to open the door, but they still couldn't open it. But Chu Yu alone had broken it with a single sword. How could this not make people suspicious? Seeing everyone's reaction, Chu Luiwei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were really imaginative. Although the heavenly square cauldron was indeed with her, she didn't get it this time. Besides, they wanted her things just because they said so. Wasn't it too shameless of them to make it sound so dignified? Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly and said lightly, I'm sorry to disappoint everyone. This time, other than successfully breaking through to the 9th stage, I didn't get anything in there. As soon as her voice fell, the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Many people looked at each other and frowned, obviously not believing it. Nothing? How is this possible? Jianghu's face became very cold, and a trace of killing intent flashed quickly. So you're saying that you're not willing to hand it over? Chu Luiwei smiled. I didn't get anything, so what do I have to offer? Everyone said that I obtained the heavenly square cauldron from there. May I ask, do you have any evidence? She was inside and they were outside. The door was locked the whole time. She did not believe that they had seen anything. Maybe the evidence is on you. As Jianghu spoke, she suddenly tapped her toes and quickly rushed towards Chu Luiwei. Since you refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then don't blame us for being rude. Jianghu, how dare you? Elder Hua Feng was shocked when he saw this and immediately rushed over. Chu Luiwei's figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. So fast. The onlookers were all shocked when they saw this. How is this the speed of a 9th stage warrior? This Chu Yu clearly has a problem. That's right. It was said that he was a rank 8 warrior before, but after a few days, he broke through and became a rank 9 warrior. If the heavenly square cauldron is not on him, where is it? What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and go. If you wait any longer, the treasures will be snatched away by the Golden Wing sect. Soon, people from all sides moved out. Everyone was in a mess. And their goal was Chu Luiwei. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from afar. Chu Luiwei looked up and a hint of shock flashed across her eyes. Between heaven and earth, there was only darkness. A transparent flame was burning crazily in midair. Within it, a completely transparent square cauldron was quietly suspended in the air. It was the heavenly square cauldron. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 p.m., mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1368. All the colors and light between heaven and earth seemed to be occupied by that huge cauldron. A sacred and majestic aura spread out from it, causing one's heart to palpitate. The heavenly square cauldron. Someone suddenly cried out in alarm. Someone quickly turned around and ran in that direction. Jianghu looked at Chu Luiwei suspiciously. So the huge commotion earlier really wasn't because of the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron? He sneered. Chu Yu, we're not done with this. After saying that, his figure flashed and he followed the crowd over there. Chu Yu, are you all right? Elder Hua Feng stepped forward and looked at her nervously. Chu Luiwei chuckled. Elder, don't worry. I'm fine. Elder Hua Feng then heaved a sigh of relief as he looked at Chu Luiwei with admiration and admiration. I didn't expect you to have such an opportunity. In just a few days, Chu Yu had broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior. If word got out, who knew how many people would be envious? Chu Luiwei raised her chin in that direction. Elder, everyone is going to fight for the heavenly square cauldron. You don't plan to go? That thing is a treasure, but our academy didn't come here for it. Moreover, so many people have gone. It's not that easy to get first place. It was inevitable that there would be another fierce battle. He only wanted to find Bo Yen and the others as soon as possible, as well as the hundreds of students in the academy. He was not interested in anything else. Chu Luiwei nodded. Then, The appearance of the heavenly square cauldron is a little strange. Let's wait and see. As she spoke, she glanced to the side and found that the group of people from Lingyun Mountain had already followed them. On the other hand, Shiru flew towards her. It's good that junior brother Chuyu is fine. Hearing the conversation between the two, she seemed to heave a sigh of relief. The white-browed old man urged from behind. Second miss, we have to hurry up. If we delay any longer, the heavenly square cauldron will be snatched away by others. Unlike Lingxiao College, they had come for that treasure this time. Now that it had finally appeared before their eyes, how could they not fight for it? Shiru nodded at Elder Huafeng and Chu Luiwe. Elder Chuyu, we will head over first. Senior sister. Chu Luiwe suddenly opened his mouth and advised. If such a saint artifact were to appear, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. However, that thing had appeared without a sound. It was a little strange. Let's not be so anxious. Let's take a closer look first. Shiruha was stunned. What you said makes sense. She came from a first-rate aristocratic family, so it wasn't as if she had never seen a saint artifact before. If one wanted to obtain a treasure of this level, it usually depended on one's luck. Even if he was the first to rush over, he might not be able to gain the recognition of this treasure. Needless to say, there were already so many people rushing over. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. Then let's go over and see what's going on. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat as he gently nodded. It just so happened that she also wanted to see what it was. Second young mistress, the white-browed old man frowned as if he wanted to persuade her again. Shiru shook her head at him. The white-browed old man finally swallowed the rest of his words and looked at Chu Luiyue in confusion. He did not know where this young man came from. The second young mistress seemed to have always valued him. Even at such a juncture, she still chose to accept his opinion. He suppressed the doubts in his heart and followed Shiru and the others forward. Since ancient times, there has only been one heavenly square cauldron. The legendary three-eyed eagle's voice sounded in a deep voice. The one in front must be a fake. Chu Luiyue nodded imperceptibly. But that aura is indeed very similar to the real heavenly square cauldron. If the real thing was not in her hands, she would have been deceived by the scene in front of her. Even she had almost mistaken it, let alone the others. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was disdainful. A fake is a fake. It will never become real. As they spoke, Chu Luiyue and the others had arrived and finally stopped about 300 feet away from the heavenly square cauldron. The group of people who had arrived first were even closer and had already surrounded the huge transparent square cauldron. No one knew whether it was because of the shocking pressure or because they were afraid of the other opponents present, but after they arrived, no one took the initiative to make the first move. It was silent. Only their shining eyes, which were filled with excitement and greed, revealed their thoughts completely. Chu Luiyue looked over. A ball of flame was burning in the air, hot and passionate. The huge transparent square cauldron floated quietly in the air. From the outside, it was exactly the same as the one in her body. Even the engravings on it were exactly the same. Except for one thing, the aura was not right. She did not feel it before, but now that she was in front of it, she immediately realized that this thing was indeed very fake. No matter how similar it was on the outside, the inside was different. In the end, it could not be compared. Unfortunately, those who had not seen the real heavenly square cauldron could not tell at all. Chu Luiyue looked around and quickly found a deep hole in the ground under the transparent square cauldron. The thick snow had melted, and even the ground had been lifted. The dark edge of the deep hole faintly emitted a burnt smell. It looked as if it had suddenly rushed out from the ground. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and fell into deep thought. This thing was obviously designed by someone in advance. But she did not know what the other party's purpose was. Suddenly, the transparent square cauldron in the air started to spin. Everyone was on guard. Then, the transparent flame suddenly burst. Boom! A terrifying heat wave spread in all directions. Chu Luiyue did not directly confront it. Instead, she chose to retreat. However, at this moment, a cry of pain suddenly sounded in her ears. She quickly turned her head and saw that one of her shoulders had been hit by a flaming whip. Blood and flesh flew. Swoosh! A black figure appeared in front of her and firmly protected her. It was her contracted magical beast, the legendary three-eyed eagle. However, the appearance of the legendary three-eyed eagle did not allow to escape safely. Instead, it attracted a bigger disaster. Because after it appeared, the transparent square cauldron suddenly rushed in the direction of The raging flames burned wildly and instantly transformed into two flaming whips. They surrounded from both sides and easily trapped her. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Did this heavenly square cauldron choose But in the next moment, their guesses were shattered. Because the transparent flame around them had already attacked mercilessly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1369. Was completely dumbfounded. She had indeed come here for the heavenly square cauldron. However, she hadn't expected that she would be targeted by it for no reason. At first, she thought that she had been chosen by the heavenly square cauldron. However, the intense pain soon made her sober up. This thing clearly wanted to take her life. After she came back to her senses, she frantically retreated. She wanted to get rid of it. However, how could it be so easy? In just a few breaths' time, several different degrees of burns had appeared on her body. Second miss. When the people of the meteor sect saw this, they also realized that they were in danger. They quickly rushed forward. They wanted to rescue However, that transparent flame was burning crazily. They couldn't even get close to it. How could they do anything else? Screech! The legendary three-eyed eagle spread its wings and blocked in front of However, that transparent flame condensed into a flaming whip and quickly flung it away. Then, it rushed toward at an even faster speed. Chu Luiwei tightly knitted her brows. Hadn't done anything out of line. So, why was she being targeted like this? Chu Luiwei was about to go forward to help when she suddenly heard a strange sound coming from below. She lowered her head and her pupils suddenly shrank. She saw that something was coming out of that messy pit. It was a black tree root. It was as thick as a baby's arm. However, it contained an astonishingly vigorous aura. It drilled out from below and started to spread along the ground. The snow on the ground melted quickly wherever it passed. Some of the snow water was absorbed by it. Some of it seeped into the ground. It started to grow at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, a second and a third root appeared. A tree started to grow out of it. Everything in the surroundings started to change rapidly. That tree was very strange. It only had roots and branches. It was completely black and didn't have a single leaf. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that it was just an object carved out of black jade. However, Chu Luiwei suddenly felt a faint familiar aura. She stared at that tree. She felt that she had seen it somewhere before. In a short time, that tree had become as tall as an ordinary tree. However, it did not stop there. Instead, it continued. The branches were growing and the roots were spreading. Wherever it passed, the snow melted, and it was as warm as spring. Everything was too strange. The onlookers couldn't help but reveal a shocked expression and step back one after another. Shurur fell to the ground and cried out in pain. Chu Luiwei looked over and saw that Shurur was covered in wounds and blood. She was in a very sorry state. She was surrounded by the transparent flames. No matter how hard she struggled, she was still unable to extinguish the flames. She could only endure the immense pain. The white-browed elder and the others were burning with anxiety, but they could not step forward to help. That transparent square cauldron clearly wanted her life. What's wrong with Shurur? He was being hunted down by the heavenly square cauldron? Everyone was puzzled. Chu Luiwei was about to step forward when he caught a glimpse of a purple-gold light from the corner of his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat, and she followed his gaze. Unknowingly, a small leaf had grown out of the black wood. The leaf was purple-gold in color. It was as thin as a cicada's wing and as clear as jade. Under the sunlight, it reflected a faint glow. This was A purple gold Bodhi leaf. Chu Luwei couldn't be more familiar with this thing. She had spent a lot of effort to get that purple gold Bodhi leaf back then. She didn't expect to see it here. Since it had grown such a leaf, then this tree, an absurd and crazy thought flashed through Chu Luwei's mind. This was the legendary purple gold Bodhi tree. The purple gold Bodhi tree usually grew in extreme places. It was the divine tree of the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan. Since it had appeared here, it proved that the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan should be nearby too. Chu Luwei quickly looked around. It was empty. There was not a single trace of the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle. However, her heart still felt like it was being squeezed tightly by something. Although they didn't appear now, it didn't mean that they weren't here. She suddenly thought of something and asked in her heart. Did the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan know that you were imprisoned in the Heavenly Square Cauldron? After a short silence, a low and cold voice finally sounded. I don't know. When it was in trouble, everything happened too suddenly. It didn't have time to tell its clan what had happened. For the next 1,000 years, it was trapped in the Heavenly Square Cauldron and suppressed underground. It was completely cut off from its clan. Therefore, it wasn't sure if its clan knew about it. However, this tree is indeed the divine tree of our clan. There should be other legendary Three-Eyed Eagles nearby. Whoosh! Before it could finish its words, several legendary Three-Eyed Eagles suddenly flew out from the purple gold Bodhi tree. Black phantoms covered the sky and instantly shrouded the entire sky. Fierce and cold killing intent rushed toward them. Immediately, they flew toward Shiril. It seemed like they were going to take her life. When the people of the meteor sect saw this, although they were frightened, they could only brace themselves. Elder Huafeng's heart also beat rapidly. Quick, save Rig. The people of the meteor sect weren't a match for those legendary Three-Eyed Eagles. However, when the elders were about to step forward, a dissuading voice suddenly sounded from behind. Elder, please reconsider. Elder Huafeng turned around with a cold face. Jianghu, now is not the time for you to interfere. Elder, I'm doing this for everyone's sake. Jianghu hurriedly stepped forward and said quickly, the legendary Three-Eyed Eagles are very arrogant. The legendary Three-Eyed Eagle is proud and almost never signs contracts with humans. The reason why they are targeting senior sister Shiru is because she forced herself to make a contract with that legendary Three-Eyed Eagle. Have you forgotten how that legendary Three-Eyed Eagle came to be? Shiru had said before that her father had spent a lot of effort to catch it. Moreover, that legendary Three-Eyed Eagle was still underage at that time. After raising it for a long time, it finally made a contract with Shiru. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation to the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle clan. Of course, they wouldn't let go of Shiru. If we go and help now, we won't be able to defeat these legendary Three-Eyed Eagles. We might even anger them and make the situation worse. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. Then what do you want to do? Jianghu took a deep breath and quickly glanced at Shiru, who was on the verge of dying. In my opinion, the one who tied the bell should untie it. The only thing we can do now is to let senior sister Shiru break the contract with the legendary Three-Eyed Eagle and try to make peace with it. Once a human and a magical beast form a contract, the contract can't be broken unless the magical beast dies. Your method won't work. Elder Huafeng quickly rejected. Jiangjuan's eyes flashed slightly. Elder, you clearly know that this will work. As long as senior sister Shiru is willing to destroy her pearl of essence, won't it work? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1370. Elder Huafeng's expression changed. There were actually many people who knew about this method, but almost no one would use it. This was because the damage to the cultivator was too great. If the pill of essence was destroyed, all the cultivation would be gone overnight. Who could accept this? This is impossible. Elder Huafeng immediately shouted in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with warning as he looked at Jiangjuan. Jiangjuan, even if you have resentment towards Shiru, She is still your senior sister. Moreover, when you were besieged by the nine-tailed black crows, she even helped you. Take care of yourself. It was obvious what Jiang Jiwan was thinking. Seeing that her thoughts had been guessed, Jiang Jiwan didn't panic and only smiled bitterly. Elder, you have really misunderstood me. Actually, it's not just me. Senior sister Shiru definitely knows about this method. In this situation, if she doesn't do this, I'm afraid she will. Only death awaited him. It was already like this, what else could she do? She could only blame herself for being too lucky to have contracted with the legendary three-eyed eagle, the heavenly Tao's reincarnation. Why didn't she think that this day would come when she was arrogant and glorious? Jiang Jiwan was very happy in her heart. Now, Shiru only had two choices. The first was to fight to the end, and in the end, all the people of the meteor sect would be killed by the legendary three-eyed eagle. The second was to destroy her own pill of essence, break the contract with the legendary three-eyed eagle, and become a cripple from then on. No matter which one it was actually a dead end for Shiru. Looking at Shiru, who was almost completely surrounded by the legendary three-eyed eagles, Jiang Jiwan felt a burst of joy in her heart. Originally, she was still thinking of ways to destroy her prestige, but she didn't expect that she didn't even need to do anything. Let's see how she can put on a high and mighty face in the future. Elder Hua Feng frowned, and his heart was incomparably tangled. In fact, they didn't have enough manpower, not to mention that Dan Qing and the others were injured and couldn't help at all. If they really fell out with these legendary three-eyed eagles, then Shiru fell to the ground, his heart filled with unprecedented despair. She had suffered quite a few injuries and was stained with blood. The snow beneath her had already melted and her clothes were soaked in the icy cold water. Her body was surrounded by a transparent flame that was scorching hot. Heat and cold intertwined, almost taking away half of her life. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. She looked back. In front of him was the heavenly square cauldron. Behind him was the legendary three-eyed eagle. The people of the meteor sect couldn't get close to her. Even her contracted three-eyed eagle had been restrained by the other two three-eyed eagles. She had nowhere to retreat. A biting cold aura rapidly approached. Shiru's lips moved slightly as a bitter smile appeared on her face. Looks like I'm really going to fall here this time. However, in the next moment, she suddenly felt something and opened her eyes. It was a slender figure that appeared in front of her. Shiru's heart skipped a beat. Chuyu? You, senior sister, don't be impatient. Chu Luiwei raised his hand and waved his sword. The surrounding transparent flames that were burning crazily were quickly swallowed by the sword. The flames surged up the sword and finally disappeared into Chu Luiwei's palm. However, in the eyes of outsiders, the flames were all taken care of by the sword. They wouldn't suspect Chu Luiwei. His series of actions were as smooth as flowing water. Before the crowd could react, they saw the youth had already swallowed the surrounding flames with his sword. You overestimate yourself. A mocking voice came from the crowd. If you want to be a hero, you should see if you have the ability to do so. You're just a ninth-stage warrior, and you think you're something? Just wait and see. The heavenly square cauldron and the legendary three-eyed eagle are not to be trifled with. Many people looked at Chu Luiwei with eyes full of ridicule and ridicule. Shiru suddenly regained her senses and hurriedly said, Chuyu, leave quickly. If he was implicated because of this, she wouldn't be able to get over it no matter what. Before she finished speaking, the heavenly square cauldron had already thrown out another flaming whip. It went straight for Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei raised his eyes slightly and glanced at the heavenly square cauldron that was about to hit him. In the next moment, the flames suddenly stopped an inch in front of Chu Luiwei. The scene seemed to be frozen, and it was filled with an indescribable sense of strangeness. Chu Luiwei raised his hand impatiently, and the vigorous force in his palm quickly transformed into a scarlet flame. Faint specks of gold could be seen within it, but they were covered by the scarlet flame and were almost impossible to distinguish. Swish! The scarlet flame also transformed into a flaming whip and lashed out fiercely. Put! A crisp sound was heard. The transparent flame instantly dissipated. Even the heavenly square cauldron behind it shook. Everyone was dumbfounded. What's going on? When did Chuyu become so strong? The heavenly square cauldron had chased after Shiru to such an extent. Why did it suddenly cower now? Chu Liwei had already turned around and looked at the dozens of three-eyed eagles that were flying over quickly. The leader was staring at her with an ice-cold expression. Both sides were in a stalemate. In a short period of time, many leaves had grown on the purple-gold Bodhi tree. Pieces of purple-gold light flickered, almost dazzling. It grew taller and taller, and the canopy of the tree overturned the sky. Below, where the roots of the tree spread, the snow melted, revealing a fertile, brownish-black land full of vitality. The surrounding temperatures seemed to be gradually rising. Elder Huafeng's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something, and he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. An elder behind him couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Huafeng, should we go over and help?" Chuyu couldn't do it by himself, right? Although he had broken through to the 9th stage, the three-eyed eagles were all divine beasts. How could he be a match for them? Elder Huafeng swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Wait a moment. It wasn't that he didn't want to help, but he knew Chuyu too well. If he wasn't confident, this kid would definitely not rush forward. The three-eyed eagles were powerful, but Chuyu had a top-notch trump card. Now, it all depended on how he would choose to play. Hearing Elder Huafeng's words, although the others were worried, they could only hold back. Jiang Jiwon sneered in her heart. These people thought too highly of Chuyu. Even if he had the help of the red-tailed phoenix, how could he deal with so many three-eyed eagles? He was really crazy about being in the limelight. But this was also good. It would be best if he and Shiru were completely dealt with. Chu Luiwei took a step forward. Shiru opened her mouth. Chuyu, everyone turned to look at him. The leading three-eyed eagle's eyes were like knives as it scraped past Chu Liu's body. Suddenly, Chu Liu's figure flashed and actually rushed towards the purple-gold Bodhi tree on the other side. Screech! Deep hatred erupted from the eyes of the three-eyed eagle as it headed straight for Chu Liu. The other three-eyed eagles also quickly followed. Digression: mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1371. Chu Liu was extremely fast. In just a few breaths, she had already arrived under the purplish gold Bodhi tree. She looked up. The dazzling leaves swayed with the wind, shining brightly. Invisible and subtle air currents surged in the surroundings, exuding an astonishingly vigorous aura. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf was an extremely rare treasure even in the Divine Ruins world. Now that a purplish gold Bodhi tree had appeared, it was even more precious. If not for the appearance of the heavenly square cauldron and the many legendary three-eyed eagles, everyone would definitely not be as calm as they were now when they saw this tree. Of course, there was another reason why they did not move. Attacking the purplish gold Bodhi tree in front of the legendary three-eyed eagles, wasn't that courting death? Chu Liu stood under the tree and looked back. Several legendary three-eyed eagles had already followed over and surrounded her. Chu Liu could clearly feel the burning hatred in their eyes. She raised her brows slightly. This hatred came a little too suddenly. Even though she had helped Shiru, they should not have such a reaction. Then, was it because of something else? Could it be because of the fake heavenly square cauldron? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the leading legendary three-eyed eagle suddenly flapped its wings. At the same time, it let out a sharp screech. Bang! A crisp shattering sound was heard. The transparent square cauldron floating in midair not far away had suddenly exploded. Everyone was stunned on the spot. Then, they saw the fragments of the transparent square cauldron rapidly disintegrate. Light flickered, and in the end, only a transparent flame was left. That ball of flame was flying towards them at lightning speed. In the end, it was directly swallowed by the leading legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Liu's eyes flashed slightly. So that was it. That flame was indeed the karmic fire within the heavenly square cauldron. She did not know what method these legendary three-eyed eagles used to extract this flame and preserve it until now. From the looks of it, they even directly controlled it and turned it into their own power. They used this flame to transform into the heavenly square cauldron and lure everyone over. Their purpose was to find the real person who owned the heavenly square cauldron. They should have realized this when she scattered the flames of the fake heavenly square cauldron. That should be where the hatred that filled his heart came from. Chu Luiyue gently placed his hand on the tree trunk. An aura poured into it. He sure is leisurely. The onlookers were not optimistic about this and could not help but discuss in low voices. The purple gold Bodhi tree is the divine tree of the godly three-eyed eagle clan. How can it be tainted by others? I think Chu Yu has really gone overboard. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants just because he has broken through to stage 9. Little does he know that there are tens of millions of experts in this world, and many of them are existences that he cannot afford to provoke. I heard that Chu Yu contracted a red-tailed red phoenix. That's probably why he's so confident, right? So what? The red-tailed red phoenix and the divine three-eyed eagle had always minded their own business, but if they were to really fight, they would be outnumbered. Chu Yu did not have any advantage. The legendary three-eyed eagle standing at the very front suddenly flew up. It went straight for Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue closed his eyes. The purple gold Bodhi tree was lush with leaves. A gentle breeze blew, and the leaves danced with it. The voice beside Chu Luiyue's ears suddenly faded away, and everything became quiet and peaceful. Countless pairs of eyes looked over. Its sharp beak looked like it was about to peck Chu Luiyue's face. Elder Huafeng's hands were tightly clenched into a ball, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest. A trace of despair flashed across Shiru's eyes. She looked at this scene in a daze, and 2 lines of clear tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. The corners of Jiang Jiwan's mouth slowly curled up into a cold smile. However, at this moment, the purple gold Bodhi tree swayed gently. Crash! The branches and leaves rustled. Resplendent light flickered. The three-eyed eagle suddenly stopped in front of Chu Luiyue. After a short pause, it stared at Chu Luiyue's eyes, which were filled with resentment, shock, and disbelief. In the end, it changed into fanatical joy. It folded its wings and landed in front of Chu Luiyue. It seemed as if it was about to bow its head and salute her. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. A gust of wind blew, and the branches and leaves gradually stopped swaying. The three-eyed eagle's movements paused, and a wisp of understanding streaked across its eyes. Then it took a step back and raised its head to the sky, crying out. Chu Luiyue suddenly felt that the purple gold Bodhi tree next to her shook. She raised her head and looked over. Countless purple gold Bodhi leaves flew out. They flew in the air and connected with each other. It seemed as if they were about to form a huge barrier. Quickly retreat. It was unknown who cried out in alarm. The crowd, which had been quiet for a long time, finally became restless. All the people retreated one after another. The meteor sex people reacted quickly and immediately stepped forward to support Shiru and take her away. No, Chu Yu is still there. Shiru struggled and wanted to go back. The white-browed old man said in a deep voice, "You guys take the second miss away first. I'll think of a way to save Chu Yu." With Shiru's current situation, she wouldn't be of any help even if she stayed behind. She might even drag them down. Shiru quickly understood this point and swallowed her saliva with difficulty. She had no choice but to swallow the rest of her words. Then she anxiously looked at the youth who was standing quietly under the purple gold Bodhi tree. In the end, Elder Huafeng's figure flashed, and he rushed over. However, the speed at which the barrier was condensing was faster than he had expected. Before he could get close to Chu Luiyue, a purple gold barrier had already appeared in front of him. A powerful oppressive aura came crashing down on him. Elder Huafeng didn't even have time to come in contact with the barrier, and his body was already sent flying. Everyone was either actively or passively forced back and scattered in all directions. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock. A dazzling purple gold barrier enveloped everything in its path. It had also isolated everything. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1372. The barrier spread out, isolating the area from the outside world. But the miraculous thing was that sunlight could still seep in, so the surrounding scenery looked no different from before. Oh no, there were some changes. The purplish-gold Bodhi tree's influence had basically transformed into something else. At a glance, it was as warm as spring and full of vitality. Chu Luiwei let go of her hand and looked forward. The three-eyed eagle standing at the front couldn't hide the excitement in its eyes. Chu Luiwei chuckled. Zichen, come out and meet your tribesmen. A huge purple-gold barrier stood out above the snowfield. Everyone wanted to go in and see what was going on, but most of them were afraid. There were so many three-eyed eagles. They might not be a match for them. Besides, even the purple-gold Bodhi tree was here. Who knew if there were other three-eyed eagles? So this is their nest, an elder couldn't help but mutter. No wonder the three-eyed eagles haven't appeared in the past 1,000 years. After all this time, they're all in the wilderness north. Moreover, they're hiding so well. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have dared to believe what had happened. The white-browed elder was swept out. He walked to Shiru with a face full of guilt. Second young mistress, this old man is incompetent. Shiru coughed and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Her face turned paler. It's not your fault. It's all my fault. If it wasn't to save her, Chuyu wouldn't have provoked those three-eyed eagles. He wouldn't have been trapped inside. How could he be a match for them alone? The white-browed elder thought for a moment and frowned. Second young mistress, actually, this old man feels that those three-eyed eagles don't seem to have any intention of harming Chuyu. At first, they were indeed full of murderous intent as they went straight for Chuyu. But later on, for some reason, their attitude seemed to have changed. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stopped attacking at the last moment. Shiru naturally saw this as well. However, one could never be too careful. No matter what, Chuyu was trying to help her. If something really happened, then don't worry. Strangely, Elder Huafeng seemed to be relieved. He will be safe. With the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, no matter how many legendary three-eyed eagles came, it shouldn't be a problem, right? At the same time, in a dungeon in the north of the untainted land, the dark and cramped space was filled with a nauseating stench of blood. A thin man leaned against the cold wall. His hands and feet were chained, and his range of movement was limited to 5 steps around him. His originally pretty face was now deeply sunken. His cheekbones were protruding, and his face was haggard. There were even a few cracks on his pale lips. With a slight movement, dark red blood seeped out. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was weak, as if he would pass out at any moment. Mu Qinghe. A hoarse and deep voice came from the front. Mu Qinghe's eyelids moved, and he opened his eyes with great difficulty. When he saw the huge bronze mirror in front of him, a trace of awe and anxiety flashed across his eyes. He immediately got up and knelt down with great difficulty. Master, it seems that you haven't been doing well during this period of time. The voice seemed to be mocking, but it still made him shudder. Shengguan Yu didn't seem to do anything to you. How did you become like this? Mu Qinghe's head was on the ground. I'm incompetent. I'm afraid I don't have much time left. I can't serve you, the voice laughed. You've been with her for so many years. Don't you have any nostalgia? All right, she's also in the north of the untainted land. Why don't you meet her? Mu Qinghe's heart skipped a beat. Digression, I'm dizzy from hunger. I'm going to look for food. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1373. He knelt on the ground and did not get up for a long time. His voice was weak and dull. She already knows that I betrayed her. There should be no need to see her again, right? What can I say if I see her? No one in this world will continue to believe in someone who once betrayed them. Moreover, the things he had done back then were enough to put her to death. That's not necessarily true. The voice laughed and said ambiguously. It's because she already knows that you betrayed her, but she still chose to spare your life. This is more interesting, isn't it? She brought you up personally. Perhaps she still can't bear to let you go? Mu Qinghe knelt on the ground and fell into silence. His body was stiff and cold. He closed his eyes, concealing all the emotions in his eyes. The surrounding air seemed to freeze inch by inch. There are too many people here this time. It's a mess. When it's quieter, I'll invite her over. If I remember correctly, the two of you haven't seen each other for a long time, right? After all, you're master and servant. It's only right for you to catch up. Don't forget that thing is still with her. Mu Qinghe's pale lips trembled. Finally, he spat out a few words with difficulty. I'll do as you say. A chilling laugh rang out, but it quickly dissipated. After a long time, Mu Qinghe finally straightened up. The huge bronze mirror not far in front of him had already lost all of its blood-red color. Only the edges of the mirror were tinged with a faint dark red. The surroundings were dark, empty, and silent. Mu Qinghe stood up slowly. His face was half bright and half dark. It was hard to see clearly. This unfilial descendant greets the ancestor. Inside the barrier, the many legendary three-eyed eagles gathered together and bowed respectfully to Zichen. They could not hide their excitement. Although Zichen looked calm on the surface, Chu Luiyue and his aura were connected. Naturally, he could clearly feel the ups and downs in his heart. After being trapped for 1,000 years, how could he not be emotional when he finally saw his clansmen? You may dispense with the formalities. Is everything going well in the clan? Zichen calmed down and finally spoke. As his voice fell, the expressions of the legendary three-eyed eagles on the opposite side became a little strange. The leader revealed a helpless expression. Ancestor, to be honest, the situation in the clan is really not good. Zichen's heart sank. Back then, after you suddenly disappeared, there were people who wantonly besieged us. After a bitter battle, more than half of the clansmen died. In the end, in order to preserve their bloodline, everyone left their original place. After many twists and turns, they arrived at this place. There has been no news of you all these years. We all thought that someone had used the heavenly square sacred cauldron. The leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Chu Luiyue as he spoke. Zichen looked indifferent. Just go on. When you disappeared all those years ago, you left behind a clump of heavenly square cauldron's karmic fire. We've been using this as a clue to search for you, but unfortunately, we haven't been able to find anything even after so many years. It wasn't until this time that we realized that the thing was actually... There was a brief silence. Several legendary three-eyed eagles couldn't help but look at Chu Luiyue again. If they hadn't sensed wrongly, the heavenly square cauldron seemed to be on this person. So this time, you've deliberately set up a trap to lure the person who really has the heavenly square cauldron and find a way to capture her? Chu Luiyue asked with a faint smile. That's right. These legendary three-eyed eagles were honest and admitted it directly. That's why we sensed that the thing was on you. So, the leader of the three godly eagles glanced at Zichen uneasily as he spoke. They could all see that the relationship between their ancestor and this young man was not ordinary. Back then, it was rumored that Taizu was killed by someone using the heavenly square cauldron, so they had always been very hostile to the person who had the heavenly square cauldron. But now, it seemed that something was wrong. The heavenly square cauldron has indeed recognized her as its master, but what happened back then had nothing to do with her. Zichen knew that they had misunderstood, so he explained directly. To be precise, if it wasn't for her, I might have been completely annihilated by now. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Luiyue immediately felt many eager gazes fall on her. I see. Young Master Chu, sorry for the disrespect. Their attitude changed drastically. Saving Zichen was a great favor to their entire tribe, so they naturally had to express their gratitude. Chu Luiyue coughed. You're welcome. In fact, she didn't lose anything. Zichen had become her contracted divine beast. It's a long story. I'll explain it to you in detail when I have time. As Zichen spoke, he looked at the leader of the 3 godly eagles. Did you decide to do this on your own, or do you have other plans? Did you spread the news that the heavenly square cauldron has appeared here? Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed. This was one of the truths that she wanted to know the most. The leader of the 3 godly eagles shook his head. Actually, someone came to us and said that he would help us find the person who had the heavenly square cauldron, so we agreed. What happened after that was basically done by the other party, and we just waited here quietly. Zichen and Chu Liyue looked at each other. Who is that person? We don't know him either. When he appeared, he didn't show his true appearance, and even his figure and appearance were different. But he shouldn't be an ordinary person. This was natural. Being able to find the 3 godly eagles and persuade them to work together was enough to explain a lot of things. Chu Liyue pondered for a moment. Zichen, who knows about the dispute between the 3 godly eagles and the heavenly square cauldron? Zichen narrowed his eyes and shook his head. I thought that only our tribe knew, but it seems that's not the case. Could it be the people who harmed you back then? Or those who besieged the 3 godly eagles after you died? Zichen was stunned, and a hint of complicated emotions flashed across his eyes. It's not impossible. It's just that thousands of years have passed, and now I don't know where they are or how they appear in the world. Anything could happen in such a long period of time. Chu Liyue crossed her arms and gently rubbed her chin with a faint smile. The other party seems to be coming for me. Using the heavenly square cauldron as bait, of course, he was fishing for her. But now she wasn't sure if the other party knew that the heavenly square cauldron was with her. After pondering for a moment, she looked up and asked, "Can you still contact those people now?" The 3 godly eagles shook their heads. They are very cautious, and they always take the initiative to contact us. And they will quickly destroy all clues and evidence afterward. We also tried to track them, but it was all in vain. The other party is very cunning. However, one thing is certain. The other party is also in the northern region of the Great Desolate Land. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 1374. Chu Liyue frowned. The weather in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness is harsh and the environment is extreme. Almost no one can stay here for a long time. Besides, in the vast snowfield, even if there are people. Suddenly, her voice paused. Of course, it was conspicuous in the snowfield, but what if it was underground? The area here was vast and boundless. Who knew what was hidden underground? She still hadn't forgotten about the valley and the tombstone that was hidden underground. Thinking of this, she was curious and could not help but ask, "By the way, do you know who died here and set up a tomb in Tombstone?" The expression of the leading 3-eyed eagle changed slightly. This, 1,000 years ago, there was indeed a great battle here. If you are talking about the person who guarded the tomb with 9 dragon skeletons, it should be right. Chu Liyue's eyelids twitched. 9, guarding. Back then, that expert fought fiercely with the dragon clan here and finally died. However, when he died, he also dragged 9 dragons to the grave with him. After death, he still used his remaining strength to suppress them here, so that they could not break free. Chu Liyue was a little surprised. The dragon clan has rarely interacted with the human clan. What did that person do to be besieged like this? We don't know about this, but I heard that it has something to do with the corpse of a great phoenix dragon. Chu Liyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. She suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. What? The 3-eyed eagle thought that she had such a reaction because she heard the great phoenix dragon. After all, it was one of the 2 ancient divine beasts. It was normal for her to be so shocked. It explained patiently, "We don't know the details, so we can only guess." Back then, that expert accidentally obtained the corpse of a great phoenix dragon in the northern part of the Eldritch Wilderness. Before he could do anything, he was discovered by the dragon clan and attacked together. That was why the great battle broke out. Unfortunately, the dragon clan underestimated that expert's strength. Even with the combined strength of the 9 dragons, they were still no match for him. In the end, both sides died. Of course, from the looks of the current situation, that expert is still a level higher. Even if I were to die, I would have to trap these dragon race beings here. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Liyue's mind. The corpse of the great phoenix dragon. She had seen it before. Furthermore, 2 of the wing bones were in Zichen's body. Wasn't it buried in the Tianling god realm in Taizu? How could this be? Was it a coincidence, or? Chu Liyue lowered his eyes, but his heart was pounding. The ancient divine beast, the great phoenix dragon, was already a rare sight. The possibility of 2 corpses appearing was really not high. Furthermore, Taizu had indeed said that he had been here before. Could it be? Absurd and bold ideas kept flashing in Chu Liyue's mind. She took a deep breath and asked calmly, since everyone knows that these dragon bones are trapped here, then why hasn't the dragon race done anything? Rumor has it that they wouldn't allow the bones of their clansmen to be left outside, right? That's true, but it depends on the situation. These 9 dragon bones have been trapped here for thousands of years. It's not like the dragon race hasn't come here and tried to take them away, but they all failed. In the end, they simply stopped coming. However, from this, it could be seen that the expert back then was indeed very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so powerful after death. Chu Liyue's mind was in a mess. She began to call out to Taizu in her heart. However, Taizu seemed to be still in a deep sleep and didn't give her any response. Zichen noticed that Chu Liyue's expression was a little strange. He thought of the wing bones in his body and guessed something. Do you want to go back and take a look? Chu Liyue pondered for a moment. Okay. Time passed slowly. The sky gradually darkened. Between heaven and earth, only the faint purple-gold barrier was exceptionally eye-catching. It's been so long, why is there still no movement at all? I wonder how Chu Yu is now. They're inside and we're outside. Even if something really happens, we won't be able to see it. Let's just wait. I heard that Chu Yu has contracted a red-tailed phoenix. Maybe he can really turn the situation around. I feel that after he was locked in that door, he broke through to the 9th stage in just a few days. It's even more shocking. Such an opportunity is something that others can't even ask for. Fortunately, the Heavenly Square's sacred cauldron didn't fall into his hands. However, that item seems to belong to the 3-eyed eagle now? The news that was spread before didn't mention this. I'm afraid we have to investigate this matter carefully. Everyone was discussing animatedly, and many people began to suspect the Heavenly Square's sacred cauldron. Those present were all important existences in the Divine Ruins world, so they naturally weren't brainless. Now that things had already happened, it wasn't difficult to detect the problem with just a little thought. Now, they all planned to wait for Chu Yu to come out before making a decision. On the other hand, Lingxiao College was silent. Chu Yu and the others were naturally the most worried about them. Jianghu stood in an inconspicuous corner behind the crowd, treating her wounds alone. Ignoring the other injuries for the time being, the most serious one was the burn on her arm. Although she had already applied medicine before, it had been such a long time that she should have changed the dressing long ago. However, they had been running back and forth, so they didn't have the time or energy to do this. She slowly removed the gauze, and the wound had already festered. With a gentle tug, it implicated a piece of flesh. Her face was pale from the pain, but she could only grit her teeth and continue. Shiriru, who was at the side, inadvertently saw this scene, and a trace of ridicule flashed across her eyes. Because Elder Danqing had publicly severed his master-disciple relationship with Jianghu, the people of Lingxiao College's attitude towards Jianghu was much worse than before. This wasn't because everyone was flattering the strong and stepping on the weak, but Elder Danqing had always loved this disciple of his. Now that he had suddenly become like this, it was obvious that Jianghu had done something wrong. He left Jianghu with the last bit of dignity and didn't expose her in public. However, everyone wasn't stupid, and their attitude towards Jianghu naturally wasn't any better. So now, no one was even helping her treat her wounds. Moreover, she had already lost most of her things before, and now she didn't even have any useful medicine. She could only reluctantly ask for some medicine from the other elders and apply it on her own. It could be said that she was miserable. You reap what you sow. The white-browed elder followed Shiru's gaze and sneered. His voice wasn't loud or soft, but it was enough for Jianghu to hear clearly. Jianghu was distracted for a moment and didn't control the strength in her hands well. She directly tore off a large piece of flesh that was stuck to her wound, and it was so painful that her face turned pale. However, no one cared, as if she wasn't here at all. Jianghu bit her lip. She couldn't go on like this. If something really happened, she would definitely be abandoned by everyone immediately. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she looked back. Chuyu had already come out just now, so that door should still be open, right? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1375. At that time, everyone's attention was taken away by the sudden appearance of the heavenly square cauldron, but almost no one remembered that the place Chuyu had gone to was also a good place. Otherwise, how could he have broken through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior in just a few days? The heavenly square cauldron was indeed a treasure, but in the end, only one person could obtain it. Not to mention, there was still the troublesome three-eyed eagle clan. Rather than waiting here for an illusory opportunity, it was better to find another way. Perhaps, she could also obtain some kind of opportunity from this? Thinking of this, Jianghu had made up her mind. Anyway, these people no longer cared about her and were even full of disgust, so what else did she have to worry about? As long as Elder Danqing was still here, she could not stand out. She might as well cut off all means of retreat. As she carefully and slowly bandaged her wounds, she looked around quietly. The sky had already darkened, and the surrounding scenery was gradually blurred. Everyone was staring at the barrier and didn't notice what was happening here. She cautiously moved backward, and her figure quickly and silently disappeared into the crowd. Jianghu thought that she had done it flawlessly, but she did not know that all her actions had been seen from the beginning. She's still as restless as ever, Shiru. Her retracted her gaze and looked lazy. Second young mistress indeed has foresight. The white-browed old man asked in a low voice. Why don't I? She doesn't need us to worry about her anymore, and there's no need to trouble you. Shiru smiled. Although her lips were pale, her aura had recovered a lot. I don't need to think to know where she went. I'd like to see what kind of waves she can stir up. Yes. The night was dark. Jianghu relied on her previous memories and barely managed to return to the canyon. At this moment, the 9 dragon skeletons were quiet for some reason and just stood there. It was a little creepy in the night. Jianghu stuck her head out and looked down. She could barely see the outline of some gravel here, and the door was still open. However, it was dark inside and nothing could be seen. I guess I still have to go down. Jianghu took a deep breath and jumped down. As soon as she landed, Jianghu sensed that something was wrong. It was unknown when the heat in the canyon had dissipated. At this moment, she was standing not far from the door, but the heat from before had completely faded away. He even felt a little cold. She cautiously looked inside. Unfortunately, standing here, he still couldn't see anything. The cut on the door was sharp and neat. It was enough to show the strength of the person who wielded the sword and the sharpness of the sword. Jianghu could not suppress the jealousy in her heart. She knew that it was impossible for her to leave such a mark on the door with her own strength. But Chuyu could. Even though he was only a 9th stage warrior, his strength had long exceeded everyone's expectations. And that sword, one look and one could tell that it was no ordinary object. Why was he the only one who got all the good things? Jianghu was furious. She gritted her teeth and finally walked forward. Since Chuyu could obtain an opportunity here, then why couldn't she? In just a short distance of a dozen steps, Jianghu quickly arrived in front of the door. She paused and hesitated for a moment in front of the door. Then she peeked inside through the hole in the door. It was dark, and there seemed to be a stream of light flashing past. But she couldn't tell what it was. She thought for a moment and finally stepped in. At the same time, the purple-gold barrier finally dissipated. They turned into countless leaves again and flew back to the branches, still swaying. The commotion caused the hearts of all the spectators to tremble, and they hurriedly focused their gazes over. In the night, the purple-gold Bodhi tree emitted a faint glow, outlining a slender figure. It was Chu Luiyue. Countless pairs of eyes fell on her face. The sparkling light made her porcelain-white face look as clear as jade. Her pair of black jade-like eyes were as bright as stars. As her eyes moved, there seemed to be a flash of brilliance. "Chu Yu!" Elder Huafeng shouted in surprise. Everyone saw the youth look up, and then the corners of his lips curled up into a smile. In this deep and quiet night, he was like a pearl quietly blooming, dazzling. Everyone fell silent. It was clearly an ordinary and delicate face, but for some reason, because of this smile, it became lively. Chu Luiyue walked towards Lingxiao College. Elder Huafeng hurriedly pulled him to take a look. "How are you? Are you injured? Did those three-eyed eagles make things difficult for you?" Chu Luiyue smiled. "I'm fine. Don't worry." Only then did Elder Huafeng feel relieved. That was true. With the crimson gold heavenly phoenix around, those guys probably wouldn't do anything to him. Chu Luiyue looked at his expression and basically guessed what he was thinking. The smile on her lips deepened. Actually, she didn't use this trump card. With Zichen around, wasn't it more suitable for her to appear than Dumpling? But this couldn't be said for the time being. Noticing the scrutinizing gazes around her, Chu Luiyue smiled in a seemingly unintentional manner. "I asked the red-tailed phoenix to chat with them and explained everything clearly, so they didn't make things difficult for me. Oh right, there's also senior sister Shiru's contracted magical beasts. They finally agreed to return them." Everyone's expressions suddenly became strange. Why did everything seem so easy when it came out of Chu Yu's mouth? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1376. That was the legendary three-eyed eagle clan. Since when did they become so easy to talk to? For the sake of the red-tailed phoenix, they didn't touch Chu Yu, but they actually agreed to release Shiru's contracted beast. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Even Shiru was shocked. She didn't care about her injured leg and limped over. The white-browed elder hurriedly supported her from the side, afraid that she would accidentally fall. "Chu Yu, is what you said true?" Shiru's heart was beating violently, and her eyes were full of expectation. Chu Luiyue raised his eyebrows and snapped his fingers. A legendary three-eyed eagle quickly flew over. Shiru's face suddenly burst with joy. This was the one she contracted. The legendary three-eyed eagle hovered above Shiru's head for a moment and looked at her apologetically. In fact, after the contract, Shiru had been very good to it. It would be a lie to say that it didn't have any feelings for it. It was just that it was in a dilemma when its clansmen came. On the one hand, it didn't want Shiru to get hurt. On the other hand, it didn't want to violate the rules of its clansmen, which led to this outcome. Fortunately, it was all over now. Shiru couldn't believe it and couldn't help but ask, Your clansmen won't pursue the matter of the contract between you and me?" The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded and quickly looked at Chu Luiyue. Of course, the others didn't have any objections since the ancestor had spoken. Not to mention, the ancestor had already contracted with a human. It quickly returned to Shiru's body. Shiru was overjoyed and looked at Chu Luiyue with gratitude. "Chu Yu, I really don't know how to thank you." Although Chu Yu didn't say much, she knew that he must have helped a lot. Although she didn't know how he persuaded the legendary three-eyed eagle clan, but it was really too good. This legendary three-eyed eagle was given to her by her father, and she had always treasured it. She originally thought that she was at the end of her rope, but who knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel? "Senior sister, you're welcome. It was willing to follow you anyway." Chu Luiyue smiled. The legendary three-eyed eagle is arrogant, but it's also loyal and righteous. As long as you treat it well, you won't have to worry about other problems in the future. Did this mean that he had already convinced the legendary three-eyed eagle clan? Shi was shocked. With so many people present, all of them were reputable figures in the divine ruins world. Even if they went legendary three-eyed eagle, they wouldn't. After all, the legendary three-eyed eagle clan's eagle-re-eyed eagle clan is Choo-Choo's legendary Choo-Choo suit. What to her? SST. Chu Luiwe turned a blind eye to their gazes and turned around. The purple gold Bodhi tree stood there quietly. It didn't continue to grow, but it didn't hide either. The legendary three-eyed eagles that had appeared earlier all returned to the tree the moment she came out. Chu Luiwe persuaded them for a long time before they didn't send her out respectfully. After all, it wasn't good to be seen by others. It was better to keep a low profile. Sensing Chu Luiwe's gaze, they all looked over, their eyes shining. Chu Luiwe's eyes twitched. Originally, after knowing that Zichen had formed a contract with her, they felt that it was unfair. But later, when they heard that Zichen was saved by her and that she had helped him reconstruct his body, they were completely submissive to her. If not for the repeated warnings, they would have pounced on her again. She coughed and cupped her fists. Thank you for your understanding, everyone. There's still a long way to go. Screech. The legendary three-eyed eagles responded in unison. There was no longer any provocation or hostility in their cries. Instead, there was a trace of reluctance. The expressions of the onlookers became even more subtle. What did Chu Yu say and do to make the legendary three-eyed eagles treat her so politely? Elder Hua Feng revealed a meaningful expression. The crimson gold heavenly phoenix is indeed powerful. Elder, I suddenly remembered that I left some things in the tomb. I'm afraid I have to go back and get them. Elder Hua Feng was stunned. Tomb? What tomb? Chu Luiwe paused and explained. It's the place where I was locked up. The surroundings fell silent. Everyone's attention was immediately drawn over. Hearing Chu Luiwe's words, many people were surprised. Tomb? So that place is actually... All right then. We'll go back and get it together. Elder Hua Feng didn't want Chu Luiwe to go alone anymore, so he wanted to follow her no matter what. Chu Luiwe couldn't refuse and could only agree in the end. She lifted her foot and walked forward. Jean D and the others looked at each other and frowned. However, before they could speak, Chu Luiwe stopped and looked back. She raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a faint smile. By the way, there's something I forgot to tell everyone. The heavenly square cauldron that appeared before is fake. It's just an object that was transformed by the legendary three-eyed eagle, and it's still with them now. If you don't believe me, just go ahead and snatch it. Please forgive us. We'll accompany you. After saying that, she turned around and left, leaving everyone dumbfounded. Is what she said true or false? The appearance of the heavenly square cauldron was sudden, and there was no phenomenon of heaven and earth. Now that I think about it, there seems to be something wrong with it. I think so too. That thing was controlled by the legendary three-eyed eagle before. This is abnormal in itself, right? Could it be that Chu Yu really has nothing to do with the heavenly square cauldron? Chu Luiwe turned a deaf ear to the voices behind her. Anyone with a brain would be able to guess what was going on by now. She only wanted to figure out one thing now. Why does it seem that someone is missing? Chu Luiwe walked a few steps and suddenly found that something was wrong. She looked around and found that someone was indeed missing. Where's Jianghu? The elders were also astonished. She was still here just now. It's only been a while. Where can she go? Shi added. Chu Yu, if I'm not wrong, she should have gone to the place you went before. Chu Luiwe narrowed her eyes slightly. Shi paused. Actually, I knew when she left, but I didn't stop her. She should be fine, right? Of course not. Chu Luiwe's lips curled up slightly, revealing a faint smile. That place is very safe. With that, she continued to walk forward. Shi blinked her eyes blankly. Why did she feel that Chu Yu's expression just now was a little, as if he was waiting to watch a good show? Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration. Could it be that there's something good hidden in that tomb? As Chu Luiwe walked forward, she kept calling for Taizu in her heart. Right now, she was eager to confirm the guess in her heart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1377. Jianghu stepped through the door and entered. The surroundings were dark, and only a few pearls on the mountain wall flickered with a weak light, and she could barely see the scene in front of her. It was empty and there was nothing. Jianghu was stunned, and her footsteps suddenly stopped. The surrounding atmosphere was a bit cold, and after staying for a long time, goosebumps involuntarily appeared on her body. She felt an inexplicable fear in her heart, and looked around again. It was still empty. Could it be that Chuyu broke through from a rank 8 warrior to a rank 9 warrior here? Jianghu frowned, and felt that something was wrong. This place didn't seem to be anything special. Suddenly, her gaze focused. Not far in front, there seemed to be a flash of light. Because the surroundings were very dark, when the light appeared, it immediately attracted Jianghu's attention. Her hands were tightly clenched into a ball in her sleeves, and her body tensed up as she walked forward. The closer she got, the more she could feel the subtle airflow in the air. The space here was wrong. Many thoughts flashed through her mind quickly. The surrounding air gradually became sticky, and even gradually became laborious. Not long after, she was shocked to find that the force in her body was rapidly depleting. After going through so much, she didn't have much strength left, and now, it was almost exhausted. She hesitated in her heart, and wanted to leave, but was afraid that she would miss something. In the end, she could only brace herself and continue forward. Fortunately, she was getting closer and closer to the flickering light. After shortening the distance, she finally saw the thing clearly. She was slightly stunned. That was because the thing that was shining with a faint glow was actually just a shattered piece of rock. This stone was completely black, and it was only the size of a fingernail, and it was quietly suspended in midair. When it rotated gently, it would reflect an extremely faint but gorgeous light. What she saw just now was this. Other than that, this stone was nothing out of the ordinary. There wasn't even a trace of energy fluctuation. Jianghu slowly frowned. What the hell? How could Chuyu be able to devour the energy of heaven and earth to break through here, but she only saw this mess? She gritted her teeth and unwillingly grabbed the stone in her hand. It was hot to the touch. Ah! Jianghu threw the stone away and hurriedly looked at her palm. There was already a burn wound on it. Bang! The small stone was thrown to the ground and rolled some distance away. Jianghu. A clear and bright voice came from behind. Jianghu was startled and quickly looked back. When she saw the person's face, her heart skipped a beat. Chuyu? When did you get here? Wasn't he still inside the barrier just a moment ago? How could they appear so quietly now? I just got here. Chuyu smiled. Don't worry, I'm later than you. As she spoke, she looked down at the stone that Jianghu had thrown away and narrowed her eyes dangerously. What's wrong? What are you looking for? Jianghu took a step back guiltily. I was just curious, so I came to take a look. Chuyu took a deep breath. That sense of familiarity surged again. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Why didn't I notice it before? Taizu, she said silently in her heart. Even though Taizu hadn't woken up yet and couldn't give her any response. Chuyu rubbed the space between her eyebrows with a headache. She was probably the only one in the world who dug up her own ancestral grave. It's really a sin to disturb your peace. Don't worry, I'll get rid of all those messy things right away. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1378. This is not a place you can come to. Please get out as soon as possible. Chuyu looked at Jianghu and said calmly but firmly. Jianghu frowned. Of course, she did not agree. Do I have to go out just because you want me to? This isn't your territory. You have no right to order me. Chuyu's lips moved. Not to mention anything else, this place really belonged to her Shangguan family. However, she couldn't be bothered to argue with Jiang Ziyuan about this. I'll count to 3. If you don't get out, then I'll help. Chu Luiwei said lightly, her eyes turning cold. Jiang Ziyuan felt an inexplicable chill in her heart, but it soon turned into embarrassment and anger. She was a demigod. Compared to Chu Yu, she was only stronger. But now she had to listen to him shouting here? How could there be such a logic in the world? Even if she was not as good as Chu Yu in some aspects, she was not to be trifled with. Thinking of this, Jiang Jiwon felt a lot more confident. She chuckled, but there was no trace of a smile on her face. Chu Yu, I know you're a lot more powerful now, but you're not invincible in the world. You can come to this place, but others can't? Are you afraid that I'll snatch some treasure here? While speaking, she kept staring at the young man in front of her, trying to see if there was any secret on his face. Unfortunately, there was none. There was a faint smile on that delicate and clean face, but no one could see what he was thinking. Especially those deep and bright eyes, which perfectly covered all his emotions. It was impossible to guess what he was thinking. For a moment, Jiang Jiwon's heart was beating a little. Even if there was a treasure here, would it have been snatched by Chu Yu? Chu Liwei just looked at her quietly, the corners of her mouth slightly raised, and she sneered in her heart. It seemed that the experience in the northern region of the wilderness had exhausted Jiang Jiwon. Now, all her emotions were clearly written on her face, for fear that others could not see it. Even if she wanted a treasure, it was not like this. 1. Chu Luiwei raised a finger. Jiang Jiwon's heart skipped a beat, but she also felt a little disgusted. This Chu Yu really took himself quite seriously. She turned around and continued to search for something in the empty space. It was clear that she did not intend to pay any attention to Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. Phew. Jiang Jiwon turned a deaf ear to him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. There were only 2 possibilities for a cultivator to break through consecutively in just a few days. Either that, or he had suddenly obtained an inheritance, which had led to a rapid increase in his cultivation. Either that, or the flow of time in the place he was in was different from the outside world, so in a very short period of time, he was able to achieve results that would take others months or even years to achieve. Judging from the strange sensations around us, it seems to be the second kind. 3. Chu Luiwei opened his red lips slightly and spat out this word coldly. Looking at Jiang Jiwon, who was walking freely inside and did not take her words to heart, Chu Luiwei smiled slightly. Since she was stubborn, there was no need to show mercy. Bang! Elder Huafeng and the others had just rushed over. Before they could say anything, they saw a figure fly out of the door and fall heavily to the ground. Pooh! Jiang Jiwon suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Her face was pale. Shiru, who was standing in front, took a step back in disgust. Although her body was covered in dust and blood, and she was in a very sorry state, being stained with Jiang Jiwon's blood still made her feel very uncomfortable. No one went forward to help Jiang Jiwon. Elder Huafeng glanced inside. Chu Yu? Chu Luiwei slowly walked out and clapped his hands. Senior Sister Jiang, I've already warned you earlier, but you refused to listen. Don't blame me. Everyone looked at each other. This Chu Yu was really bold. He didn't even avoid this matter. However, Jiang Jiwon had already been abandoned by Lingxiao College, so others naturally wouldn't be polite to her. When Jiang Jiwon heard this, she was so angry that her internal organs churned, and she almost couldn't breathe. Chu Yu, don't go too far. This place doesn't belong to you. You have no right to treat me like this. Chu Luiwei glanced at her lazily. Senior Sister Jiang, don't you understand the principle of the strong being respected? If you want to stay, it's very simple. Just come in, as long as you can stay. After Chu Luiwei finished speaking, he raised his eyebrows slightly and said to Elder Huafeng and the others, Elder, I still have some things to deal with, so I'll go in first. I'll have to trouble you and everyone to wait for a moment. After saying that, she turned around without waiting for Elder Huafeng's reply. After taking a step, she stopped again and turned her head slightly to look at Jiang Jiwon with an extremely indifferent gaze. Senior Sister Jiang, I'll be waiting for you at any time. As soon as she finished speaking, Her figure quickly disappeared behind the door. A silver barrier quickly appeared and sealed the entrance of the door. At the same time, it also isolated everything inside. Although everyone couldn't see anything from the outside, Jianghu was humiliated in public, and she was simply furious. However, she was currently riddled with injuries and could barely stand up. How could she rush over and ask for an explanation for herself? Her cultivation level was indeed higher than Chu Yu's. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem for her to suppress the other party. However, after experiencing those things previously, she didn't have much strength left. On the other hand, Chu Yu was completely unharmed. Moreover, he had just broken through and was at his strongest state. Wasn't it obvious who would win and who would lose in such a situation? Behind them, the others who had rushed over saw this scene and were all stunned on the spot. Jianghu couldn't help but frown and ask in a deep voice, "Huafeng, what does Chu Yu mean by this? Could it be that he intends to monopolize this place and not let us in?" Previously, because of the sudden appearance of the fake heavenly square sacred cauldron, everyone's attention was attracted, so no one paid attention to this place. But now, they remembered that this might be the place where the real treasure was hidden. Chu Yu's attitude was also very suspicious, and it couldn't help but make people suspicious. Elder Huafeng sneered. "You didn't come for so long before, but now that Chu Yu is back, you all remember?" Jianghu didn't care about these sarcastic words and raised his foot to walk forward. "Since the door is already open, we have to go in and take a look." However, just as he took a few steps, he heard a cold voice coming from inside the door. "From now on, no one is allowed to enter this place again. If anyone wants to give it a try, just come." Arrogant. Because of shock, almost everyone's eyes widened as they looked at each other. Jianghu couldn't help but let out a "Ha. What a good Chu Yu. Aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Today, I'd like to see how long you can guard this place." As he spoke, he waved his arm and a golden spear appeared in his hand. The spear pierced through the air. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1379. Jianghu threw the spear directly at the broken hole on the door. His previous experience told him that this door was not so easy to deal with. To be on the safe side, he still chose the easiest position to break through. But soon, he found that his idea was really childish and ridiculous. That was because the gun was stopped 3 steps away from the door by the tyrannical aura from above. It was firmly blocked outside. Jianghu's face changed. He quickly stepped forward, grabbed the handle of the spear, and stabbed forward with all his strength. Nothing moved. There seemed to be an invisible iron wall in front of him, isolating everything easily. He tried his best, but he still couldn't even leave a ripple. It was ridiculous. Jianghu's face flushed red. He was angry. Cunning. He tried twice and found that he couldn't continue, so he simply chose to give up. He turned around and shouted angrily at Elder Huafeng, "Huafeng, is this how Lingxiao College teaches students?" Elder Huafeng raised his eyebrows high, and his expression became a little strange. He looked at the huge hole in the door that was still extremely sturdy, then looked at Jianghu, who was flustered and exasperated, and curled his lips. "Jianghu, it seems to be your fault that you can't get in, right?" He didn't have the ability, but he still wanted to push the blame to others. Moreover, the other party was a youth. What was this? Wasn't that a little too shameless? Although the remaining 2 sentences were not said, Elder Huafeng's eyes and expression had already surpassed all words. Jianghu's eyes were wide open, and there seemed to be 2 balls of burning anger in his eyes. His chest rose and fell violently. "Huafeng, don't go too far. Are we the ones who are going too far?" Elder Huafeng simply found a stone to lean against, crossed his arms, and looked relaxed. "We're not stopping you. What do you want to do? Just do it directly." As he spoke, he seemed to think that it was not enough, and he waved at the crowd beside him. "Everyone of Lingxiao College, listen up, rest here. If anyone still wants to break through the door, we don't need to pay attention to them. Just watch from the side. Everyone responded in unison, yes. Jianghu was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Watch from the side? Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to see him make a fool of himself? However, he just couldn't open the door. Even if there was a huge hole in it. What a great humiliation. Golden Flute took back his spear and spat on the ground. He didn't turn around and leave. Instead, he just stood there and stared at the flickering barrier. There must be something wrong here. No matter what, he was still a dignified high god powerhouse. How could he be so easily stopped by the barrier of a 9th stage warrior? The rest of the onlookers were originally a little restless, but after seeing his series of circumstances, they all settled down and decided to wait and see. Thus, for various reasons, the area in front of the door quickly quieted down. Other than the strange atmosphere, everything else was normal. Elder Huafeng sneered and closed his eyes. It had always been Chu Yu taking advantage of others. He had never seen anyone being able to get anything back from Chu Yu. To deal with him. How rare. Just look at how ugly Jianghu's face was. How refreshing. Thinking of this, Elder Huafeng inexplicably felt a little proud in his heart. The students of Lingxiao College were indeed extraordinary. Chu Yu's ability to cause trouble is really amazing. An elder next to him couldn't help but laugh softly. They had always been at odds with the Golden Wing sect. Of course, they were very happy to see the other party suffer. Shiru's eyes flashed and she asked hesitantly, Elder Huafeng, don't you think that Chu Yu is really similar to that person in some ways? Elder Huafeng's expression froze, and he immediately looked at the door with a complicated gaze. Behind the flickering silver barrier was everything that no one knew. He didn't speak. If it wasn't for this, why would he have taken care of Chu Yu since he entered the academy? Not to mention this time, he was in a daze and directly brought Chu Yu to the northern border of the wilderness. Even if he knew that it was extremely dangerous, according to Chu Yu's identity, he should firmly refuse. But he didn't. Wasn't it because of those eyes that were very similar and, it's all in the past? Elder Huafeng closed his eyes. There's no need to mention it again. That girl, she didn't even reply to a message for so long. Who knew where she had gone? As long as she didn't come back, they wouldn't mention her. Shiru wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she only nodded slightly. Huff. After isolating herself from the outside world, Chu Luiwei returned to the tomb. She stood in the middle and looked around at the empty surroundings. She couldn't help but sigh softly. Then, she lifted the hem of her clothes and knelt down. She bowed her head and kowtowed to the tombstone. Taizu was wrong. Please punish me. No one responded. Chu Luiwei lowered her head to the ground. After a while, she straightened up. Taizu seemed to still be asleep and showed no signs of waking up. This made Chu Luiwei a little worried, but she also faintly looked forward to it. Now, she was basically sure that this was Taizu's real tomb. Then, it was very likely that Taizu's last incomplete soul was hidden here. If she could gather it, Chu Luiwei thought for a moment and took out the jade pendant. In the dark space, the jade pendant emitted 2 balls of faint light, like flowing water slowly surging within. Unfortunately, it didn't fuse. These were the 2 incomplete parts of Taizu's soul. Chu Luiwei had already gathered them together, but she hadn't been able to fuse them. She didn't know if the last part was also here. Chu Luiwei clenched the jade pendant tightly and frowned slightly. According to the legendary three-eyed eagle, the great ancestor had fought fiercely against the 9 giant dragons by himself back then. Even the most inferior bloodline of the dragon race was more than enough to deal with the human race. Taizu could fight 9 dragons alone and even use 9 dragon bones to suppress his tomb in the end. Then, how strong was he back then? Why did the incomplete soul in the Tianling god realm always think that it was still stuck at the demigod realm and couldn't break through? Also, Taizu was so familiar with the primordial north region. What did he do here back then? Taizu, wake up quickly. Chu Luiwei closed her eyes, clasped her hands in front of her, and prayed silently. Now, she only hoped that Taizu would be safe. She didn't know if the broken tombstone would affect Taizu. Chu Luiyue felt guilty at the thought of this. Hopefully, that tombstone boom. A loud sound suddenly came from the mountain wall above her head. The entire tomb trembled violently. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up. A cold and gloomy aura was rapidly approaching. Her heart trembled. It's coming with ill intentions. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1380. The people waiting outside were even more shocked than Chu Luiyue. Most of them were thinking about how to choose. Should they continue to wait patiently or think of a way to break in? In fact, everyone was ready to make a move, but what happened before was enough to calm them down and strive to find the best solution. However, no one had expected that before they could think of anything, someone had already barged in and made a move first. In the sky above, several figures in black robes attacked and directly attacked the people below. Elder Hua Feng tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and quickly flew up. Who are you? There were about 7 or 8 people on the other side. All of them had their faces covered. However, the aura on their bodies was very strong. All of them were high gods, especially the man at the front. His figure was a little bent, and he seemed to be an old man. His aura was obscure, and it was impossible to see his strength at all. Elder Hua Feng's heart sank. The other party had just broken in directly. They were probably prepared. These people didn't pay any attention to Elder Hua Feng. They just kept attacking downwards as if they wanted to collapse the entire tomb. Gotcha! A huge crack appeared on the stone at the top. Elder Hua Feng's expression changed. Before he could say anything, he saw a figure rushing out from below. Slender and agile, it was Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue gently nodded at Elder Hua Feng. Elder Hua Feng hesitated for a moment and took a few steps back. But his heart was still full of worry. He stared at the 2 sides in front of him without blinking. Chu Luiyue stood in the air, facing the other party from a distance. She quickly glanced at the other party and found that she didn't know these people. However, the chilling aura on their bodies was somewhat familiar. Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes and suddenly smiled. May I know everyone's names, and why have you all come here? The leading old man's voice was cold and indifferent. My master wants to see you. Chu Luiyue was stunned at first, but then she raised her eyebrows slightly. Who is your master? If you want to see me, you have to tell me your identity, right? You don't have the right to ask. The old man didn't seem to put Chu Luiyue in his eyes at all. Every word he said could not be disobeyed. Just come with us. Otherwise, everyone here will pay the price for your choice. The old man's tone was flat, as if he was just stating an ordinary matter. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. Taizu was now at a critical juncture. If she left, she didn't know what would happen. However, the old man's second sentence quickly made Chu Luiyue change his mind. Don't worry, one of your old acquaintances is also here. You haven't seen each other for a long time. It's time to visit him. Chu Luiyue clenched his fists. Ooh. The old man gave her a meaningful look. Mu Qinghe. Chu Luiyue immediately said, I'll go with you. Chu Yu. Elder Hua Feng was shocked and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. Chu Yu, think twice. These people were obviously not good people. Wouldn't it be dangerous to go with them? At that time, it would be difficult to escape. Chu Luiyue shook her head gently. Elder Hua Feng, I have to go this time. Don't worry, I know what to do. Seeing her determined attitude, Elder Hua Feng opened his mouth, but in the end he could only shake his head and sigh. Who exactly was that Mu Qinghe? When Chu Yu heard this name, his expression changed. He even ignored the danger and wanted to leave with them. If something were to happen to him, Chu Luiyue looked at the old man. Let's go. The few of them surrounded Chu Luiyue and flew towards the depths of the northern region of the primordial world. Their figures quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. When they were sure that they could no longer be seen, the onlookers looked at Elder Hua Feng and the others with subtle expressions. Which family was that just now? I can't tell, but he's not weak, especially the one who spoke. I'm afraid that not many of us here are his match. But he doesn't seem to be from the aristocratic families of the Divine Ruins world. Why did they call Chuyu away? They even said that they were meeting an old friend. Who is that Mu Qinghe? Everyone discussed animatedly, but they were all confused. Shiru looked at Elder Hua Feng and couldn't help but ask in a low voice. Elder, are we really just going to watch? What if Chuyu? He's obviously not a match for those people. What if something happened to him if he followed him? Elder Hua Feng closed his eyes. Chuyu means that we shouldn't follow him. He might have other plans. But his strength is limited and he's alone. What other plans can he have? Shiru frowned. Chuyu had saved her before, so she had always been very grateful to him. She absolutely couldn't bear to see anything happen to him. Elder Hua Feng was about to say something when he suddenly felt something. He flipped his palm and took out a green jade token. This was Elder Bo Yan's. The light spot on it suddenly burst out with a dazzling light. A powerful summon came from it. Elder Hua Feng was surprised and happy. Bo Yan is looking for us. Hearing this, everyone from Lingxiao College rushed over. The expressions of the elders were especially tense. Really? Don't make a mistake like last time, right? After all, they had already suffered a loss once. Elder Hua Feng clenched the green jade token in his hand. It's true this time, because this was a signal that would only be sent out when the owner of the green jade token was in danger of life and death. Bo Yan and the other's situation was not optimistic. As soon as these words were said, everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Then on one side was Chuyu and on the other side was Bo Yan and the others. It was really difficult to choose. Elder Hua Feng clenched his fists. After thinking for a long time, he finally gritted his teeth and made up his mind. Let's go find Bo Yan and the others first. As for Chuyu, since he dared to go, he must have the confidence to come back. Moreover, those people who had appeared just now were very powerful. Only by finding the other people in the college would they have a chance of winning. If they rashly went now, it would be useless. After making the decision, the people of Lingxiao College quickly gathered and left together without any reluctance. The remaining people, Jean D and the others, were stunned. They all left just like that? First, Chuyu was taken away, and then the people of Lingxiao College quickly left. Did they really not want to stay here anymore? He couldn't help but look at the huge tomb, but he was shocked to find that the silver barrier was still there. He gritted his teeth and looked at the crowd. Everyone who else wants to go in, please take a step forward. Let's do it together. If we find any treasures inside, we'll split them equally. What do you think? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1381. Many people sneered in their hearts. Divide equally? That was pure nonsense. None of the people present were vegetarians. If they really saw the treasure, how could they obediently wait for it to be divided equally? When the time came, they would definitely fight. They might even fight to the death. However, judging from Chuyu's attitude earlier, there might really be something here. It was not impossible to work together to break this barrier first. I'll do it. I'll do it too. Almost everyone expressed their agreement one after another. Therefore, after a short discussion, everyone present began to work together. They tried their best to break that barrier. Chu Luiwei, who had already gone far away, turned back to take a look. Even though she couldn't see anything here, she could roughly guess what the situation was on the other side of the tomb. She only hoped that the barrier left behind by Taizu was strong enough to hold on for a while. It's right in front. The old man in the lead said indifferently. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. She immediately retracted her gaze and looked forward. It was a snowfield. Crystal clear snowflakes piled up into a thick layer. It was the darkest time of the night. Even the ice and snow looked much colder than during the day. She stood still with the few people in front of her. Then, the old man stepped forward alone. Chu Luiwei stood behind him. She could only see his hands dancing. Soon, the snow on the ground quickly melted. A large open space was revealed. She looked over, and her heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something. With just a glance, she could tell that there was another mystery under the ground. Sure enough, the old man flew down and knocked twice on the ground. Click! With an extremely soft sound, an entrance appeared on the ground. It was pitch black, and nothing could be seen. There was a trace of heart-palpitating coldness. No one knew what was down there. Please, the old man turned around and glanced at Chu Liwei extremely coldly. Miss Shangguan. Chu Liu's heart skipped a beat. As expected, when they said Mu Qinghe's name, she guessed that they already knew her identity. This was also the reason why she had chosen to follow him. Nowadays, not many people knew about her true identity. Even Jiang Jiwan only had suspicions, but was unable to confirm them. However, these people seemed to be very confident. Moreover, what they knew was obviously more than she had expected. Without any hesitation, Chu Liuwe flew down and walked to the entrance. She looked down, only to see a cold and dark staircase. She lifted her foot and walked down. Bang! Not long after she went down, those people closed the entrance again. To Chu Liuwe's surprise, they did not follow him down. This made her heart sink, because this didn't mean that they had let down their guard against her. On the contrary, only if there was an existence more powerful than them down there would they be so relieved to leave and let her come in alone. It was lonely and cold, dark and cramped. Only the sound of Chu Liuwe's footsteps echoed in the entire space. Soon she saw a person. She couldn't be more familiar with that figure. He sat on the ground and leaned against the wall, motionless. His hands and feet were chained, and he was locked in that small space. His clothes were a little disheveled and stained with blood. His breathing was weak and he looked very miserable. If it weren't for the slight rise and fall of his chest, Chu Liuwe would have thought that he was dead. Mu Qinghe. She paused for a moment and spoke softly. Hearing her voice, the man, who had his head lowered, finally moved. He looked up hesitantly. When he saw Chu Liuwe, a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. But soon he recognized Chu Liuwe's identity. His pale and cracked lips trembled slightly, as if there were many things he wanted to say. But in the end he just lowered his eyes again. "Greetings, Your Highness." Chu Liuwe walked down the stairs and stood there for a long while, looking at Mu Qinghe. If it weren't for his response, she wouldn't have dared to confirm that this emaciated and haggard man in front of her was the high-spirited and proud Mu Qinghe who had followed her for many years. Somehow, when she saw this scene, she felt as if her heart had been hit by something and she felt a little sour. She didn't know if it was for him or for herself. In the past, they had fought side by side. But today, it was as if they were facing each other with swords. Chu Liuwe took a deep breath and looked around. Then she focused her gaze. Right in the middle, there was a huge bronze mirror. The appearance of the copper mirror was extremely familiar. She stared at it for a few seconds and suddenly, an idea flashed across her mind. This was exactly the same bronze mirror she saw in the Crown Prince's study in the Baiming dynasty. "Shangguan Yu." A low and hoarse voice suddenly came from the bronze mirror. Chu Liuwe's eyes moved slightly, and the corners of her lips lifted slightly. "At this time, Your Highness still won't show your true self?" The other party chuckled. "It seems that you're very curious about me." Chu Liuwe's smile deepened. "Mu Qinghe is actually one of your people, right? If I'm not wrong, Jiang Yuqing seems to be of the same status?" "You're as smart as before." The other party chose to admit it openly. Obviously, he was very confident and wasn't afraid of Chu Liuwe causing any trouble here. Smart people always make smart choices. "I'm sure you know why I've invited you here today." Chu Liuwe narrowed her eyes and raised her eyebrows. "Sorry, I don't know. Please enlighten me." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.